This is the multiple award-winning GardenDC podcast, the podcast about everything gardening in the Washington, D.C. and Mid-Atlantic region. I'm your host, Kathy Jentz. I'm the editor of Washington Gardener magazine. Our content is aimed at gardening enthusiasts, people who grow everything, from edibles to ornamentals, natives to exotics. If it grows in our area, that's what we talk about. Welcome to episode 247 of the GardenDC podcast. Have you considered how you will adapt to still be able to garden in your golden years? In this episode of GardenDC, we talk with Dwayne Pancoast, author of The Geriatric Gardener 2.0, all about gardening as we age. The plant profile is on variegated sweet flag, and we share what's going on in the garden, as well as some upcoming local gardening events in the What's New segment. We close out with the last word on Mulch to the Rescue by Christy Page of Greenprints. This episode, we're joined by Dwayne Pancoast, author of The Geriatric Gardener, and he is a returning guest. Welcome back, Dwayne.
I'm happy to be here, Kathy. Thank you.
Great to have you back. And so you've written a new book, a sequel to The Geriatric Gardener. So we're going to get into all of that and tips for gardening as we age, and especially for those of us who are having mobility issues or finding other limitations. But before we get into that, Dwayne, since we already asked you if you had a green thumb back on that other podcast, episode 161, Adaptive Gardening episode, I'd like to ask what's been up with you in the last 2 years since we last spoke in August 2023.
Some friends, other garden writers, and family asked me to do a second book, so I did a second book. Gave it a real creative title, The Geriatric Gardener 2.0, more adaptive gardening tips or advice for seniors. And I've been doing more presentations and keeping my blog up every other week. I've been doing that since 2017.
Great. And Dwayne, for those listeners who are interested in visiting your blog, can you give that address?
I can. It's thegeriatricgardener.wordpress.com.
Great. And the is in there, correct? Not just Geriatric Gardener.
The Geriatric Gardener, all one word.
That'll make it a lot easier. And we'll have that address in our show notes for our listeners too. So imagine in the last 2 years, you're not getting any younger yourself, right? And you're doing more gardening and speaking, as you were saying, and then working on this book, which I know from experience, book can be more than a full-time job. And then the bigger job is getting the word out about the book once it's published.
Right, and I self-published it, so it wasn't a matter of sending a manuscript to a publisher. I had to do the layout, the photos, and take care of the printing.
And like a lot of self-publishers who were, like you said, a jack of all trades, but you have experience in publishing.
I do. For 36 years, I ran my own advertising and public relations firm, and for about 10 of those years, we had a publishing division where we published books for other authors.
Well, that definitely puts you ahead of things in the self-publishing world. So you're on your second book, Dwayne, and it's on adaptive gardening, but a lot of people aren't familiar with that term. Could you define adaptive gardening?
I have never found a real definition of it, Kathy. I've Googled it, I've looked everywhere, and nothing's been a clear definition, but there are paragraphs that describe it. So I came up with my own. I consider adaptive gardening adapting your garden and your gardening to your changing physical and mental capabilities.
And that applies not just to seniors and aging in the garden, of course.
No, if younger people adopt some of these techniques, they may be able to put off some of the physical problems I have And a lot of seniors have like arthritis, and they can maybe even not have those problems. Such things as wearing a broad brimmed hat when you're out gardening and it covers your ears and the back of your neck, using sunscreen, using sunglasses. You may avoid some of the skin cancers that can come from not doing that if you use knee pads or some kind of padding under your knees when you're young. You may not have some of the knee problems that we have.
It's
And
good advice.
if you lift correctly, you may avoid some of the back problems.
Can you describe that proper lifting technique, Dwayne?
Yes. Instead of bending over with your back, squat with your knees and lift it up no higher than your waist. If you have to put it up above your head, do it in 2 motions. Have something to bring it up, put it on a bench or a table or something, and then lift it up over your head.
Good advice, Dwayne. And back to what you're saying about protecting your knees, I've always sworn by having a kneeler in the garden, just a pad that you can get at the dollar store. You can certainly make your own or even use an old pillow.
The thing I used when I could do outdoor gardening was a 5-gallon bucket. It was collecting dust in the garage. So I took it and I would put my tools in it, go out to the garden, and one of the tools was a kneeling pad. I knelt down, I'd kneel on the pad. If I wanted to sit, I'd just turn the bucket over. When I was done, I would put the debris back in the bucket and the tools on the top, take them back to wherever I would go back to the garage and leave the tools off, and then either throw the debris in the trash can or put it in the compost heap.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 5-gallon bucket, but I also will use what's available, like a kitty litter bucket. So those big yellow kitty litter buckets, they're kind of more square than the round 5-gallon buckets. So they're okay for setting on for temporary purposes.
Well, we have a regional gardening magazine where I live called Upstate Gardener's Journal. And in their last issue, I think it was their last issue, they had a gussied up 5-gallon bucket. It was one with a cover, and they showed you how to upholster and pad the cover to sit on and mount a tool bag on the outside.
I like that idea. And I've seen when I used to go to fairy festivals and those sorts of events, people would make padded mushrooms to sit on using exactly that technique. So they would just do like a circle of plywood or something thick, pad that, and then attach that to the top of the 5-gallon bucket. So it could be decorative and fun as well as useful.
Well, some people think that padding your knees is all you have to do, kind of a one and done. But actually, adaptive gardening is a work in progress because our bodies are changing all the time. In addition to physical problems like arthritis, some people have cardiac, respiratory, and vascular problems that they have to adopt. And other people have sensory problems like low vision or memory loss or even temperature sensitivity that they have to adapt to. So we're always changing, and adaptive gardening has to change with it if we're going to continue gardening.
Can you describe some of the techniques you would use if you have lowered sensory issues? So like your vision isn't as good as it was before.
Sure, your vision, one of the ways to adapt is to make your paths so that you can feel them rather than just see them. Different paths in different directions use different paving, and then at corners, put something like a wind chime or something that you're familiar with, or even a fragrant plant that you can smell, and you'll know that's the place to turn. And as far as temperature sensitivity, that's the easiest thing of all. If you're sensitive to heat, garden in the early morning or the late afternoon when it's not hot out. If you're always cold, the afternoon would probably be your ideal time to go out in the garden.
So it's really a matter of diagnosing and knowing what your personal issues are, and then coming up with, either inventive or maybe some tried and true methods.
Yes, and I've got all of those in both my books.
And when you speak to senior gardeners or those who aren't quite seniors yet, what is the most important thing that they really need to know?
Time management. We were always taught when you start a project, see it through to the end. But as you get older, when you're doing a strenuous project like that, you get tired very quickly. So managing your time is to plan out work breaks or work periods followed by rest breaks. And the best way to do that is to figure out what's your ideal time before you start to get tired. Maybe 20 minutes for some, half hour, 3/4 of an hour, or even an hour for more fit people. Then at the end of that hour, rest and rehydrate. Have a place where you can near your garden. If you have a small space garden, you can go to your patio or deck. If you have a large garden, you ought to have someplace out near the garden itself, because if you have to walk back the long distance to the deck or patio, you're going to be kind of wanting to skip some rest periods, and that's not good. When you go out there, take a comfortable chair and something for shade. If you have a shade tree, sitting under the shade tree is great. Otherwise, a patio umbrella or these easy ups that the vendors use at festivals are good, and have plenty of water and a comfortable chair, and take every rest break. If you have to, either set the alarm on your phone or take a kitchen timer out with you so that when it rings, you set your tools down, you go and you rest. And when you come back, instead of going back to that strenuous project, go to a less strenuous one. And as the day progresses, go to less strenuous projects. That may seem like nothing's going to get done, but at the end of the week, you'll probably see that you've done more than you would if you kept doing a project that was strenuous and getting tired and slower and slower. Less productive.
Yeah, very much so. I was going to say that I tend to do the easy stuff first, kind of to warm myself up, and then tackle something big. But I like your they call that advice, eat the frog, like do the hardest thing first, and then reward yourself with some of that lighter work.
Well, rather than use the easy work to get yourself up to speed, we recommend warm up and cool down exercises. And I don't put in my books specific exercises. I tell people that if you're healthy and you're not under a doctor's care, join a gym, because Medicare pays for gym membership for seniors. I don't know whether it does for everybody, but I know it does for most of them. And if you're under a doctor's care, tell the doctor what you want to do exercise-wise, that you want to warm up so you can go out and garden. And the doctor will probably give you a requisition to a physical therapist who will check you out and then give you a regimen of exercises.
That's great to know, Dwayne. I had no idea Medicare might cover some of that, especially physical therapy. So also, if you have specific limitations or injuries, maybe a physician or physical therapist can recommend specific exercises.
Yes, they can. And Medicare, it depends, I guess, on what your supplemental insurance is. I know mine, I can get up to, I think it's 8 weeks of physical therapy, but there's copay with each visit.
GardenDC will be back after this short break.
Get low-maintenance alternatives to lawns with Ground Cover Revolution by Kathy Jentz. Reducing the lawn is among the biggest trends in homeownership, with an endless stream of homeowners looking for an eco-friendly alternative to a traditional turfgrass lawn. In the last few years alone, over 23 million Americans converted part of the lawn to a natural landscape, and now they're looking to do even more. The biggest challenge to adopting this new ideal of the perfect lawn? Knowing how and when to replace your turf, and which plants are the best ones for the job. Ground Cover Revolution is here with all the answers you need, and some you didn't even know you needed. Included are 40 in-depth profiles of plants that are perfect choices for replacing a grass lawn. There are options for sun, for shade, for dry and wet sites, and for various climates around the globe. There are choices that bloom, options that are evergreen, and selections that are deer-resistant. Kathy Jentz has also included an incredibly useful chart that gives you all the specifics on each of the 40 choices for quick reference and to make your ground cover selection process even easier. Whether you want to replace the entire lawn or just reduce the amount of land dedicated to turf, Ground Cover Revolution will help you usher in a new and improved idea of what a beautiful lawn should be. Ground Cover Revolution is available now wherever you buy books, including Amazon.com and Bookshop.org.
Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.
From your own experience in being a lifelong gardener, Dwayne, I can imagine you've made some adaptations over the last few years. What are some specific ones that you do in the garden?
I don't do any outdoor gardening anymore. I have a landscape service that does shrub pruning and plant health care and lawn care. And then I have a lawnmower, a blow and go guy who cuts the lawn. I concentrate on my indoor gardening, and in 2020 I had a stroke and use a walker, so that has kind of put the crimp on how I water my plants. But I'm really into Tillandsia or air plants, so my cleaning lady, when she comes every 2 weeks, she waters the potted plants. And then every 2 weeks, I have a container. I go around the house and pick up the Tillandsia, take them into the kitchen, and put water in the container. And an hour and a half later, I take them out, put them on a towel. Sometimes I wet my plants and leave them there for an hour to dry, and then put them back where they're in their home.
Yeah, I think Tillandsia, because they're so lightweight and easy, that's a great houseplant choice.
It is.
And so they're also called air plants. They usually are found in their native zones, hanging on the side or off of trees. So they're just gathering moisture in the air. But because our homes are so dry on the main, that we need to give them some supplemental watering, as you described.
That's true. And the container that I put them in to soak them, I can carry on my walker, can hold that and still hold myself up on a walker.
Are there other houseplants you recommend for seniors?
I have a number of holiday cactus, and they're very easy. I've got one that's heirloom. It was given to me by my daughter-in-law. It was her grandmother's, and when her grandmother died, she gave it to her aunt, inherited it. Then her aunt was moving into a small house that didn't have room for it, so she gave it to my daughter-in-law. And it was looking very peaked in her house. So one day I got a text with a picture of it that asked if I wanted it. So I looked around I didn't have any room on one of my plant racks for it. So it was on a nice antique table. So I texted her back and told her if the table comes with it, I'll take it. And about an hour later, they were there with a plant. And one of the reasons is they're very warm-blooded people. In the middle of winter, their house it feels like it's about 60 degrees, and they had it in the front window, and sometimes you open a window in the middle of winter. So that's why it wasn't doing well there. Here, I keep my house fairly warm, and it's grown like a tree. So those are easy. I have a bunch of Hawarthia. I started out with one, and then the offshoots, I've got a whole bunch of them. But they have a more limited lifespan.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Hawarthia too because, again, as you say, they're so low, easy care. They look like a little mini agave or sometimes aloe, depending on the type of Hawarthia. And if you're big into cactus and succulents, you can collect a lot of different Hawarthia.
I am.
Are you a member of your local cactus and succulent society?
No, I'm not that into it.
I think there's some good collectors there, and I've purchased some from attending Cactus and Succulent Society meetings locally here in the DC area, and they're I will say, bargain prices and great tips from the fellow members there.
Well, that's good to know. I don't believe we have a local cactus and succulent organization.
Well, that could be your next hobby, Dwayne, is starting that locally. But let's circle back to where you talked about having help in the garden now, a landscaping service and a mow blow service. A lot of listeners, readers come to me and ask for referrals, and I have to stay neutral on that. So I always recommend they ask around their neighbors. How did you find reliable services near you, and how would you recommend others go about doing that?
Well, the landscape service that does my pruning and weeding and stuff, and plant health care and lawn care, they were a client for 36 years. So I just used them all the time. As far as the mower, I had a young guy whose grandmother I knew, and then he decided to get out of the landscape business. Instead of cutting lawns, he's cutting hair now. When he decided to get out of the lawn mowing business, I asked him who he would recommend, and he recommended the company he used to work for, and so I've had them ever since. They do a good job.
Good. So referral from another professional, it sounds like.
Right. I've always had green industry clients. I've worked with 2 different local companies, but then I've had companies all over the country that I've worked with. So I pretty much know the market, know who's good and who isn't.
And I think the hardest part when people are trying to find professionals to work for them, especially in their landscape, is finding somebody with a good knowledge base who's still affordable. You know, get what you pay for, right, Dwayne?
Right. And here in my area, which is upstate New York Finger Lakes area, if you want to get a gardener, a professional gardener, they are next to impossible to find. A lot of landscaping services will offer them, but I once heard the definition of a gardener versus a landscaper is a gardener has dirty knees and a gardener smells of gasoline, or a landscaper smells of gasoline. And that's not necessarily a put down. It's just that landscapers tend to use power equipment. For a couple of years, I had my mowing service do my shrub trimming as well. They used a power hedge clipper. They didn't really, when it came to weeding, they didn't do a good job because they didn't know the plants. They didn't know which ones to take out, which ones to leave. So they took only dandelions and the stuff that they knew.
Yeah, I think it's good that they were on the safe side, Dwayne, because I've heard so many horror stories of people who hired somebody to help them weed in the garden and then come out and find out all their perennials that they worked so hard to grow had been all ripped out.
That's true. I've been very fortunate.
So yeah, my advice would be to work alongside somebody till they learn and maybe teach them if you can't afford somebody with a higher knowledge base, or to hire somebody and just show them, you're going to have to be out there with them. You can't just let them in the garden.
Well, one of the books that I read when I first started my blog was Gardening for a Lifetime by the late Sydney Edison. And she always worked with the person that she hired to do her gardening. I don't know if you're familiar with that book or not.
Yeah, I think that's a great book and a great companion to yours. And Sydney Edison is a great garden writer, and I think that might still be in print, although I do see it still at, good local bookstores as well. And of course, you can purchase almost anything online now.
I don't believe it is still in print. All I've seen is used copies.
We'll have to check on that because I thought it still was with Timber Press, but I will double check on that. So one of your other big pieces of advice to aging gardeners, I know, is to downsize. Can you describe that process?
Well, it isn't necessarily downsizing. There are people that prefer to downsize. We downsized back in 1, mainly because it was getting too hard to climb the stairs. I wasn't too emotional about it because I didn't care for the house that we lived in for 23 years. It was a money pit from the day we moved in. And one of the things that I advocate, if people are going to a townhouse or an apartment or a smaller house on a smaller lot, and there is an emotional tie, that they take some of their plants that they really like, and I warn them to pot them before they put the house on the market, because if they're still in the ground, you have to get the buyer's permission before you can take them. I did get the buyer's permission, and the only thing I took from the old house was a ginkgo tree. It was about 3 inches in the diameter of breast height. It was a freebie. It was going to be thrown out by a garden center that my son was interning at, and he asked if he could take it, and they let him do it. It had a frost crack in the trunk, which is a vertical crack that's caused by water between the bark and the wood that freezes and thaws, and it breaks the bark. So he brought it home. We planted it in the yard. When we were ready to move, ginkgo trees were in short supply in the nurseries. And so I had this client of mine who's still doing my landscaping. He had a big tree mover on a truck, a tree spade that digs in and picks it up, transports it. And so I had him just bring it over and plant it here. And the new owner didn't care as long as I filled up the hole so that his kids wouldn't fall in it. I went the extra mile and had them sod the hole of the plug after they put it in. And I went over the night that they moved it and made sure he was happy. And he didn't even realize it was gone.
I think go ahead, Dwayne.
But as far as downsizing, my thing right now is downsizing in place. There's a big thing with aging in place where contractors are modifying homes so people can stay there as long as possible. Really, the only thing you need for downsizing in place is a first floor bedroom and bathroom. And you can go one step further and downsize your garden in place. I have one chapter in the book on my 2.0 book on downsizing, one on downsizing in place, and then a case history of a local friend who downsized in place. She lives on a 2.5 acre property. Her husband was a master gardener. He had a humongous garden. I think he must have fed the whole neighborhood and charities as well. And she when he died, she knew she wasn't going to be able to take care of it. So she moved her garden, her vegetable garden, to a container garden on her patio and deck. And she also had provision in for growing stuff like potatoes and sweet corn that don't lend themselves to containers. And I went over because she took pictures, because she had found I don't want to give it away, but she found a great find at the community swap shop, and she brought it home, refinished it, and made it into the nicest elevated bed I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think elevated beds, raised beds, especially those with some type of edging that you can sit on, like wide enough edging,
Right.
are a great way to downsize in the garden. And even those of us who are not at that stage of downsizing yet, there's just so much more convenient.
Well, the thing with elevated beds versus raised beds, if you like the garden sitting down, there's a place to put your knees, where with a raised bed, even if you sit on the capboard, you have to kind of twist your body 90 degrees, and that isn't good. So I'm a big fan of elevated beds instead. And elevated beds, for people who use raised beds and elevated beds interchangeably, elevated beds are the ones on legs. The window boxes on legs. And one of the other things I do is, for either elevated beds or potted plants or containerized plants, I don't put the soil directly in there. I plant them in pots, nursery pots, that'll fit right into the container, or you can put a bunch of nursery pots in an elevated bed. That way you don't have to go to the trouble of cleaning the soil out of the elevated bed, which can be time-consuming and labor-consuming. All you have to do is pull the pots out. And if one of the plants dies or becomes unproductive, you can just swap it out.
Yeah, I've been seeing more and more of that elevated bed type that you're describing. So some people will call it a salad table or a grow table, because it's basically, like you say, a box on top of legs. But usually I see them in the 24-inch, 28-inch height. So you could pull up a chair next to it and work in it, or you could stand and do it standing. I don't see much above 30 inches, and I've even seen some that are even 18 to 24 inches, so a little bit lower.
Me too.
I could see them all around a deck or patio area, like edging that whole area to make a little bit of a garden room that way too.
The picture that I use whenever I'm writing about elevated beds in my blog shows a plastic one and a metal one, but you can also get the wooden ones that I think you're talking about. And these are on a above ground pool patio, the patio that surrounds it. The couple that owns it, the property, has a whole garden in containers around the perimeter of this raised pool.
I also see them now, like the plastic extruded ones that you're talking about, Dwayne, in self-watering. Have you had any experience with the self-watering? Because that could also be an adaptive assist, so you don't have to raise a heavy watering can and water them.
No, I haven't seen them.
Yeah, I've seen them with like they're kind of like a sleeve inside. So they're lined, but those obviously you would be planting directly into them versus what you're describing where you're putting the pots lining inside, because with self-watering, they would need to be obviously planted in the soil and filling out the box. So two different great adaptive techniques. And any other advice for our listeners who are aging in place or looking to downsize their gardens?
Well, we touched on indoor gardening a while ago, and the test pilot Chuck Yeager, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the name. He's credited with having said, do whatever you can do for as long as you can, and when you can't do it anymore, do what you can, which sounds like it should be attributed to Yogi Berra, but it was attributed to Yeager. And this is one reason to have houseplants, particularly tillandsia. The other reason, of course, is in the winter, it'll help you keep your green thumb green. But when you can't go out in the garden anymore, this is a great way to garden. I'm living proof of it. I'm giving you a pause because I'm thinking one of the blogs that I did for the National Garden Bureau is entitled Nobody Has to Be a Retired Gardener. And this is one of the things it touches on. And I was going through the internet seeing what might be up with the adaptive gardening or the geriatric gardening. And I found a post on our late great colleague Larry Hodgson's website in which he talked about his condition, and on the left side he reproduced the National Garden Bureau blog, and the other side he had a very moving description of his condition and how he had been trying everything that I had suggested except moving out of his house, telling people that this is good stuff to do.
Yeah, I miss Larry a lot, Dwayne, and that was a mutual friend of ours, a garden writer in Quebec, Canada. And so you can find his website still being maintained by his son, and that's called The Laid Back Gardener, I believe, Dwayne.
Yes, and if you were to Google that title, Nobody Has to Be a Retired Gardener, I think the first thing that comes up is the National Garden Bureau site, and the second thing is Larry's site.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the Laid Back Gardener right now, and we'll try to include a link to that also in the show notes. And that's Larry Hodgson, Hodgson. Mm-hmm. And so, Dwayne, how can our listeners purchase your book? I know you said you're self-published, so it's not going to be available everywhere that garden books are normally sold, correct?
No, because senior citizens tend to be on fixed incomes. I kept the price low deliberately, and there's really no room for wholesaling at bookstores. So if you go to our website, thepancoastconcern.com, all one word, Pancoast is Pancoast. Up in the left corner of the homepage is a picture of the cover of the book. You click on that, and it'll take you to where you can buy the first book or the second book individually, or a combination of the two. The first book is $14.95. The second book is $19.99, and the combo is $30. Savings about $5. And we've noticed that sales are running 2-to-1 combo sales versus single copy sales. And also, if you go to my blog at geriatricgardener.wordpress.com, there's a link at the end of every blog that will take you to that page where we sell the books.
Great. And we'll have that link as well in our show notes. Thank you so much, Dwayne, for being a guest again on the GardenDC podcast. And I hope you have a great rest of your growing season, both indoors and outdoors.
I hope you do too, Kathy. It sounds like you're a pretty busy person.
Yes. Thank you again, Dwayne. GardenDC will be back after this short break.
In the book The Urban Garden by Kathy Jentz and Terry Spate, you'll find dozens of inspiring and creative ways to grow flowers, shrubs, vegetables, herbs, and other plants in small spaces and with a limited budget. Whether you want to grow on a balcony, rooftop, front stoop, or a tiny urban patio, turn your growing dreams into reality and build a gorgeous and unique garden that showcases your personal style while still being functional and productive. With the genius ideas and resourceful tactics found here, you'll be maximizing yields and beauty from every square inch of your space. No matter what you grow, the 101 amazing growing ideas found in the urban garden will turn your tiny urban yard into a treasure trove of green you'll be proud to share with family and friends. Buy your copy today at your local retail bookseller or order it online now at Amazon.com or bookshop.org.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password, To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Variegated sweet flag, plant profile. Variegated sweet flag, Acorus calamus variegatus, is a perennial plant that is in the rush or sedge family. It's native to Central Asia. A close Asian relative is golden variegated sweet flag, Acorus gramineus ogon, which has a golden colored leaf with a green stripe. Note, there are other Acorus species that are native to North America as well. Variegated sweet flag is highly decorative with cream-colored stripes on bright green leaves that resemble a short, mounding ornamental grass. The plant has a sweet fragrance when you bruise the leaves that reminds me of fresh ginger. The roots also have a pleasant scent. Variegated sweet flag is hardy to USDA zones 4 to 10 and grows to about 2 feet wide and high. It prefers to grow in full sun to part shade, in medium to wet soils amended with lots of organic matter. If it's allowed to dry out, the tips of the leaves can turn brown. You can trim those off if you don't like them. Variegated sweet flag is a good choice for the edges of water gardens, in rain gardens, or in bog gardens. It can also be used as a ground cover when mass planted in moist areas of your landscape. It is deer and rabbit resistant. It is generally low maintenance and disease-free. It spreads by underground rhizome, and it's easy to divide it. It's best to divide every 3 years or so when it becomes crowded. Variegated sweet flag, you can grow that. What's new in the garden this week? Well, I've been enjoying the blooms of many of my annual flowers, from the gomphrena to the wave petunias. Over at the community garden plot, the sun gold tomatoes are starting to ripen. In garden tips that we shared this week, we included one about tidying up your garden a bit by pulling out or clipping off daylily stems close to the base after they've finished blooming and are starting to dry out, to encourage reblooming and to stop seed formation, unless, of course, you intend on collecting those daylily seeds. You can see myself and a couple of our summer interns when we table at the following local events in the Washington, D.C. area. The first is the Prince George's Food Equity Council is hosting the 2025 Community Garden Summit with their county partners on July 22nd. That's a Tuesday, and from 4 to 7 p.m. at the PGC, that's the Prince George's County Sports and Learning Complex. The theme focuses on community gardens that grow food for food assistance providers. And you can find out more about that and register at eventbrite.com. Look for the Garden Summit tickets. And then that following weekend, on Saturday, July 19th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. is the Kenilworth Water Lily and Water Garden Festival at Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens in Washington, D.C. The Saturday of that festival is Community Day, and we'll be there with a community table in the tabling area. You can see us there for information on local water gardening. Then on Sunday, July 20th, from 10 a.m. to noon, we will be at the annual Garlic Festival at the Tacoma Park Farmers Market in downtown Tacoma Park, Maryland. We'll have just harvested and cured garlic as the star of the market. Many of the vendor stands will be selling them, and we'll be answering your garlic growing questions along with Tony, the garlic guru Sarmiento, a past guest on the podcast, and members of the Tacoma Horticultural Club. They'll be on hand also for general gardening tips for home gardeners. Plus, we'll have a guest chef who will serve up some garlic-based tastes with recipes to share. The event is free and open to all, and you can look for the specially marked garlic booths at the market to purchase your own locally grown garlic to grow or to enjoy in your home recipes. Happy gardening!
This is The Last Word by Christy Page at Green Prince with Mulch to the Rescue, The Adventures of an Organic Gardener by Kay Flowers. Organic gardening may not earn me any medals or book me a talk show appearance, but it sure has its perks. For one, I know exactly where my fruits and vegetables come from, straight from my backyard, still warm from the sun. My grocery bill shrinks every year, and my food is free from pesticides that harm honeybees or cause birth defects in cute mice. However, this gardening journey is full of hard work and unexpected twists. Last year's bumper crop of melons doesn't guarantee this year's seeds won't rot. Or, beloved and unpredictable Mother Nature, she has handed me many a hearty joke, to quote Eeyore, during my years of organic gardening. Take this year, for instance. For the first time, I had potato bugs. And not just a few, it was a full-blown invasion, like poking an anthill. Twice a day, I inspected the potato vines, squishing the striped adults and tossing the orange munchers into the yard, inviting the robins to a blue plate special. Since the bugs were feasting on my potatoes, I figured fair is fair. This had never happened to me before. I follow the gardening books religiously. I rotate crops in my raised beds, plant certified seed potatoes at the proper depth in early spring, cover them with soil, and then hill up more soil as the plants grow. When the potato vines reach 2 feet tall, I mulch them with leftover hay from the barn. Okay, the books say to use straw, but the old hay is free, and I'm frugal. Our horse Jake may not have gourmet taste, but we renew his winter hay supply each year and use the old bales as garden mulch. It's easy. Just pull the bales apart and lay the flakes around the stems of tomatoes, peppers, and potatoes. Mulching cuts down on weeds, cools the soil on hot days, and conserves water. Totally a win-win. Usually the mulch is thick enough to prevent hay seeds from sprouting. If they do, I simply turn them over with a garden fork to dry out in the sun. This spring, I planted and mulched 2 potato patches to ensure plenty for fresh eating and winter storage. But there was a snag in my plan. I had mulched 1 patch twice and was just starting on the second when I ran out of old hay. Seems we'd been late with some winter feedings, and our Houdini horse had helped himself to extra meals 1 too many times. I'm not exactly a plant detective, so it took me a few days to notice something interesting. The potato bugs were only devouring the patch with less mulch. Could it be that crawling through the extra mulch exhausted the bugs in their quest to find their way up? Could the extra mulch have made it too dark for them to follow the light to the surface? Could it be I read too many mysteries? Researching in my gardening books, I found this to be true. Not that I read too many mysteries, but that mulching protects plants from several soil diseases and discourages potato bug infestations. From this serendipitous experience, I've learned to lay down a nice deep mulch to deter even the most determined pests, and to double-check that the stall door is securely latched and bolted. This has been The Last Word by Christy Page at greenprints.com.
Thank you for listening to GardenDC. By the way, you can become a listener, supporter, or subscriber by going to creators.spotify.com/pod/show/GardenDC/subscribe. That link is also in our show notes. Another way to support this podcast is to subscribe to our monthly digital publication, Washington Gardener Magazine. To do so, go to washingtongardener.com www.washingtongardener.com or washingtongardener.blogspot.com. You can find Washington Gardener on Twitter or X, Instagram, and Pinterest at WDC Gardener, also on Blue Sky and many other platforms. On Facebook, you can find us at Washington Gardener Magazine. And be sure to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast listening app or a thumbs up on YouTube. Please take a moment to share us on your social media with hashtag GardenDC so other gardeners can find us too.